Well, thank you everybody for joining here. Um, so, for those of you who aren't aware, this is Thomas Scott, the myth, the man, the legend. If you're on the franchising socials, we are lucky enough to have him on the call today. And for everyone that's joined, I'm sure you saw the tagline. Best practices for starting a multi-brand franchise group. Um, but really, where this stemmed from is Thomas and I were talking a couple months ago, and we really wanted a webinar series to kind of focus on some new brands, emerging brands, because the franchise sector, especially specifically in service businesses, is just so hot right now. And I wanted a forum that was really laid back, really casual, just conversational, but most importantly, very informative. Because with so many new service franchises popping up, obviously there's a lot of individuals out there, looking to be their own boss, or maybe franchising a business that they've already proven successful. And I thought, what a better way to navigate that journey than to learn from the best, the people already doing it. So, for those of you that don't know, Thomas Scott, he started the Home Run Franchising Group. So he's going to tell you a little bit about it, but he's got 25 locations or so across 4 brands. They're in 11 states already. I think he's even working on new brands. He really was who I envisioned to be the perfect individual to kick off this series. So before we kind of dive into it, Thomas, do you want to tell everybody maybe just a little bit about yourself and
Sure.
kind of your journey to get here?
Yeah. Well, first off, other than being a founder and a serial entrepreneur and what I would call a franchise enthusiast, I've been in franchising 25 years. I've been a franchisor of 9 different brands in my career and have run a supplier business that does franchise development. So in that business, we've grown 420 or so different franchise systems and helped recruit over 12,000 people. So I'm a hardcore franchising advocate. I really love this industry, and it's been fun to watch it evolve over the last 25 years. Like it's really turned into something amazing. And boy, there's never been a better time to be in franchising than today. Like we'll cover this today, but some really interesting factors that affect everybody's business, and particularly the home service segment. But franchising's in a boom stage, and when I started franchising, there were 2,400 systems in all of North America, like Canada and the US together. There's 7,000 today. If you add in almost 3,000 systems in Canada and 4,500 in the US, there's more than one new franchisor starting a day. Like more than every day, there's a new franchisor that starts. And we're not even like scratching the surface of what's possible. It's not going to be long before there's 10 or 15,000 systems. And then if you go down, any service people, if you ever work with Home Advisor or Angie's List, they have 465 categories of home service things that they generate leads for. And every one of those exists because there's market demand for whatever that service is. And there's enough demand in the market for 6 or 7 brands in all 465 categories. So there's room for another 5,000 or 6,000 just service brands just by populating the home service list in Angie's List. So existing businesses that people are in. It's a crazy opportunity right now. Smart that it's doing well.
It really is. And I mean, obviously, you have inside information being an expert within this field, but I'll tell you what, all you got to do, if your neighborhood's anything like mine, you walk down the street and you can see it right in front of you.
Yeah.
The trucks, the vans, they're all brands that you recognize. They're all brands that you see more and more. So you can kind of see that explosion. So those kind of numbers make perfect sense. It's kind of happening kind of right before our eyes.
For sure.
So, I know I love the journey aspect. I think it gives, a bit more context. So, we know how big it is right now. And for anyone who sees you, on LinkedIn and Facebook and things like that, we know your expertise. Tell us a little bit about, kind of Home Run and how it got here today to offer.
Sure. Yeah. Home Run really is the evolution of kind of life's work for me, and thinking about franchising, thinking about where the opportunity is and what type of service business I use as a consumer and what kind of businesses I think are the ideal sweet spot business for someone to operate. And when I look at franchising and I look at the societal trends of massive amounts of younger entrepreneurs, people like going through a recession and getting out of COVID, and reevaluating what they're doing with their life. People are thinking differently about like how to do it. And we're in this entrepreneurship age where, like I have 6 kids and several of them are Gen Zs, and they're of this mindset that jobs are for losers. like why would you want to work in an office for 40 hours a week? Like, who thought that idea up? That sounds ridiculous. So like this idea that they all own businesses. 2 of my daughters own service franchises. One has 4 units, one has 1. The other works for a franchisor. I have a son that's going to study franchising at Palm Beach Atlantic. I mean, they've grown up in an entrepreneurial franchise household, but but he's going to study franchising. He does a knife sharpening on the weekends, and he wants to franchise a knife sharpening when he's 18. He's like, if you open the doors to that, it opens up a whole new range of possibilities for people. And so if you look at the amount of people we recruit as an industry, the whole industry of franchising, we recruit between 17 and 20,000 new people a year. There's about 1 million franchised operations in the United States at any given point, and that number's been going up every year. If you look at the amount of people that are looking to start a business in the United States, like how many people do you think that is? Like how many people do you think are looking at franchises or just considering starting a business at any point?
It's got to be tens of thousands at the very least, probably hundreds of thousands, realistically.
Hundreds of thousands. Yeah. It's 28 million people. It's at 28 million. It's 28 million, like million. And so if we like struggle to get 18 or 20,000 people over the finish line, and so doing franchise development work for lots of brands led me to this idea that maybe there are some inherent problems with the way franchise companies generate leads, go to market, and think about entrepreneurship. And maybe we need to rethink our whole approach. And that's what led to Home Run, the formation of, I intentionally set up businesses that I thought were attractive for first-time entrepreneurs, people maybe that were coming out of a career or were doing a family business, or one of my big kind of personas is the person that's like 22 and is getting out of college and they don't want to get a job. They want to start as a business owner on day one. That's makes up about 30% of the people I recruit, and they make up 60% of my top performers. Like, they're unbelievably coachable today. And so one of the pieces is, and I like service. I like a simple business without low overhead. My wife and I have franchised lots of things in our career. My wife ends up running the businesses when we have franchise units. I've been a multi-unit owner in 5 systems. And we got out of a coffee shop franchise, which we really liked, a brand called Just Love Coffee here in town in Nashville that I helped franchise. We had 3 units. We had 65 employees. We had $35,000 a month in fixed costs plus payroll. During COVID, that was not fun. That was just not restaurants in COVID were a nightmare. Like, we ended up making money and selling them at the end of the day. But my wife said, I don't ever want to work 7 days a week and manage high school kids and deal with all the issues around food service. And she really likes to watch HGTV. So we got a few years back into the closet business and started Up Closets, our custom closet business, using some, automated advances in AI technology for design software, direct to mill, CNC based 3D printing for the products. The technology in that space is amazing. So she has a Mercedes Sprinter van that's wrapped. She has 2 part-time installers, and she's got another salesperson that works with her. The 3 or 4 of them have this amazing business running. And if you could start a business like that and do it for 60 or 70 or 40 or 50,000, something that was much more reasonable, I think the market is really high. If I Google how much does it cost to start a business, the Google excerpt that comes back is $30,000. That's like the average cost to start any kind of business is about 30 grand, because you got to set up an LLC and have working capital and hire people, get tools and all that stuff. The average cost to start a franchise is way up at 250,000. So I think our kind of inherent pricing models that we use scare people away that otherwise would get into business and see. And so service, because it's inherently low overhead to start with, made a lot of sense. So my idea of creating home runs for people and helping them leverage the franchise model to generate wealth and create freedom and participate in the economy at their full market value was just to create a structure of initial cost that was 40 to 60 grand, where they could get in and they didn't have to mortgage their house or risk bankruptcy if things didn't go as smoothly as they wanted.
Yeah, that's interesting. You hit on a couple interesting elements, I thought, there. I mean, you experienced something where COVID, was kind of hurt you, and then it didn't scare you away from jumping into something completely new post COVID. And I love that you kind of really saw, from a generational aspect, some value in those Gen Zers, millennials. I'm a millennial, man, and we get trounced, and I don't know why. Like, I work hard, my friends work hard, we're doing good, and
Yeah.
it's great to see that, you identified some things and an opportunity within a market sector that is just exploding, and you are, ahead of the curve and riding the wave. I think you identified some key factors. What would you say are the biggest trends or factors? Do you
Well,
think it
I
is
think
just that low overhead, or
well, and so services, the advantage of service is that it is simply lower cost and there's a bigger demand. And I like that business axiom, and I say it in my videos sometimes that, the pioneers get slaughtered and the settlers are the ones that profit. If you've ever heard that, like, you don't want to go into a space where nobody's doing the service that you're in. You only want to look for a space that has a lot of competitors. There are 15 custom closet companies here in Nashville. Half of them are franchises. We started Up Closets and we just mocked up because we did mystery shops. We look at what everybody else is doing, and we did a SWOT analysis and figured out, like, hey, here's 5 ways we could go to market and be excellent and have differentiation, not be a disruptor, because I think that's sometimes a negative word, but just to be different. Like, what is
yeah,
it they're not doing that needs to happen now? And we went to market with strategies on all of our brands that leverage those. And I think that's driven by, people spent 2 to 3 years in their home during COVID, and they're, suddenly at home way more. Then you had remote work pushed on people. And now most people are remote work. It's more common. Like our brand journalist office, we're going to let the lease go next year and go totally remote and
yeah,
lose a $10,000 a month office. We don't need it. My friend Nick Lopez, who runs Lime Paintings, a really awesome franchise painting concept, started his business in his mom's basement and still operates out of his mom's basement. He's got a fully remote franchise model. Like, he's the CEO. He's an amazing guy. But he's a millennial like you. You guys all live in your mom's basement. That's the story.
you would think so, yeah,
You're probably in your mom's basement right now as we're looking at
yeah,
it. But I think that there's been a really significant shift in buyer behavior and how people want to connect with brands. And that shift was really quick and rapid and significant in its implications. And it used to be, you would go to the Yellow Pages or to Google and you'd get a flyer in the mail or a postcard. And, you would end up with, trying to call somebody back or fill a form out or go to a website to get somebody to give you a quote. And the process was really slow and painful. And by painful, I mean, my kids in their 20s hate to talk on the phone. They don't like to talk on the phone at all. Like, the phone, like this device is not to them for talking on. It's for other things. They don't understand why people my age want to email, and they don't like to go to websites. They like to look at videos. They like to text message, and that's the way they communicate with people. So you have this kind of shift in communication preferences where people were becoming, texting and instant message based texting, things like Metaverse or Facebook Messenger or Google Messenger, all of the chat based and text based that became the most common way that people wanted to talk to a company. At the same time, companies were really ill prepared for that immediate response. Like, how do you take all those customers coming to you and give a human response right off the bat? Because people are looking for very specialized service. Like, they don't want to hire a handyman anymore. They don't want just an electrician. They want somebody that can replace ceiling fans, or somebody that can clean dryer vents, or somebody that can fix their pantry. Like, they have very, very specific problems. And so the key to any service business today is to be a specialist and not a generalist. Like, people don't hire handyman. They hire, somebody to install the Ring camera on their front door, or to hang a TV, or to do something with your dryer, like the really, really specific problems. And so all of the marketing kind of now is around very, very specific personal problems that a customer would have. I call that kind of mapping the customer journey out, developing an ad strategy that involves human contact and immediate access to a person. And that's where franchising shines. Is, we're not in the service space is so fractured. We make jokes about them. We call them the murder van guys, like the guys that roll up in the white van with the ladders on top. And, we'll say like free candy on the side and ransom letter notes or something, like that's just not. people are really tired of that, and they have different expectations. So when you show up, we use Mercedes Sprinter fans that are fully wrapped. They're very nice fans. They're clean. They're organized really well. We show up and we're wearing polo shirts, and we're really professional. We're using your software to automate a lot of customer touches. If we're late or running behind, like we leverage you guys a ton. It's been a big part of our business. And we have this like over the top, we call it putting on the show, just like exceptional customer service and fair, transparent pricing. And really, we do what we say we're going to do. We show up when we're supposed to. When we show up, we're respectful and kind, and that's really it. To win the business today, you have to be immediately accessible, because if that person can't talk to you when they're looking, they go to someone else and you don't get that business back. Like you've lost it. So if
absolutely.
You go to, yeah, but that's,
oh, go ahead. Sorry. Finish your thought. And then
no, go ahead. Jump in.
There's so many things you touched on in that, and it's so spot on. And you just look at pop culture, the lexicon or whatever. And the joke is always that the guy's going to give you this window that's like a day long. And, the job's always going to get more and more expensive. And all of these kind of idioms and jokes that are just really built around the fact that like maybe service pros are unreliable or untrustworthy, and the value of franchising is just like you said, you can, through tools and resources, you can be ahead of the curve and really communicate effectively. You can specialize effectively. You can show that you can do all the things that now, because the market has changed so much, really break that mold. And so if you think about it in that respect, it makes sense that franchising is exploding, because if people want to communicate, through texting, and they want someone to be transparent and show up when they're going to show up, or communicate if they're running late, a franchise gives you the ability to have that consistency in every location that you open. And so now you can look at these service options that all of a sudden are reliable and trustworthy and transparent, and they're everywhere. And competition, proves that they're going to be something that you can trust. And I think it's really interesting on the brand side of it too, or even the vertical side. I put a poll out there. I'm interested to see what everyone thinks. Do you have any insight on maybe a specific vertical that you think would be a little more hot right now than others, a significant opportunity for expansion?
I think if you're thinking about franchising your business, or you're like me and you're looking to add multiple brands because you have a platform for operations, and that's the platform brand idea is popular in franchising right now. You really have to know what you're doing to pull that off, because it's about people and systems. And, franchise is only as good as the systems you have. And one of the real promising points that a franchise has today is that a franchisee does typically 40% higher sales. That's the number that gets thrown around, and it's an anecdotal number in the industry, but it's based on this idea that if you start a bit, like if I start a dryer vent cleaning business up myself, I can do that for $30,000 or $40,000. I could buy a dryer vent superheroes for $15,000 or $20,000 more. It's not that much more to be in a franchise. But my franchisee is going to hit the ground running and ramp up much faster, because they're not spending half of their day figuring out accounting and marketing and website and Google Business Directory and paid search and Facebook and where to get stuff from and who to buy tools from and how to handle customer stuff and sales automation. They don't have any of that stuff. So we just launched a dryer vent superheroes down in Palm Beach, a really cool market. And our main vendor for that business, a company called Innovate, does a couple of times a year, does advanced training for dryer vent techs and owners of independent shops. And they asked our guy to come, since he's in their backyard there in Jupiter, Florida. And he showed his van. He's been open 24 days and he's doing more sales than 2/3 of the people who had been in business for 2 years. And he's not even at the 30-day mark. And they were like shocked. They couldn't understand, like, how did you do that? He didn't never picked up a drill. We got him on a ladder and training. He didn't know skills on the mechanical stuff at all, but he's very competent now because we trained him and we have systems and support. That's the value of a franchise. So when I look at brands, for me, there are some service brands that involve a lot of labor and big, highly technical crews. Think restoration, think like something like putting in AstroTurf or large scale landscaping or garage floors, where you have to have very skilled labor to do very specific things. And the training curve and the staffing on that can be really hard. And I make a mistake on somebody's garage floor, that could be a $10,000 mistake that I have to eat. Yeah. So, I try to avoid those types of businesses. They're great businesses if you have the expertise on it, but I like dryer vent cleaning is great. The closets are good because we have manufacturers on board. We can train on the software. I can teach anybody to design amazing high-end closets, and they'll look like they've been designing closets for 20 years, and we can install them and get them done in a day, in and out. There's very little that can go wrong in that space. We have a whole system and structure for that. The dryer vent business shoots 1 or 2 vans and 3 technicians. It's a very low kind of staff overhead, and we hire HVAC techs for that. So you look for a brand that has some that you can hire people, and that there's a pool of people you can hire, and that the people you hire you can pay more. That's the key to being the employer of choice, and you have to really think about that today. Like a technician for a franchise brand should make more than a technician for a non-franchise brand, because you should be able to charge a little more. You should have much more repeat business. You should have a fuller schedule. And, you have this value proposition, which kind of leads me to this concept that I talk about a lot, which is professional development. And I think as a franchisor, if you're going to recruit younger franchise buyers today, and I think you should, younger buyers who've been kind of grown up into this remote work, like my kids kind of got out of college when remote work right around COVID and everything was turning into remote. So their idea of what a job is, it doesn't relate to what you or I worked in. They've never had to really go to an office at all. Like it's always been remote work. And the problem with remote work, although it has a lot of upsides and freedom and flexibility, is that you're not around older, more experienced people every day. And so you miss out on those little nuanced conversations that you have around the water cooler, how to solve problems, how to deal with relationships, how to grow professionally, how to think about things in a critical way, and how to solve kind of bigger issues and how to plan. You just don't learn that on a Slack and a Zoom call. It's not the same collaboration. And so a lot of people are looking to franchising because as a franchisor, you can actually frame your franchise business. It's not only I'm going to teach you how to do locksmithing or computer repair or car detailing or dryer vent cleaning, whatever the brand is that you're in. I'm going to actually help you develop professionally into a more astute business owner. Like I'm going to teach you skills so that you can have 10 businesses. And if you start when you're 22, by the time you're 30, you got a $5 million business and a fleet of trucks, and you're a total badass. That's the value proposition for buying a franchise today. It's not just the single unit performance. It's a career path for people that hinges on professional development. And also as a franchisee, you have to teach franchisees to provide professional development for their technicians. That's how you solve the labor problem we have today, is you make the job compelling and interesting so people want to stay because there's something obvious in it for them. They're not just an hourly tech where they're on a gerbil wheel churning.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting too, teaching that development. I think that kind of coincides not only with what you're doing, but what we're seeing within the franchise, service sector as well, because you've accepted the challenge of starting something in this sector. You've identified the brands that you want. You recognize the differences of today's market, and you chose to do it in a way that offers multiple brands. So,
Right.
in kind of training them to, maybe take on more, they have even more options just under the umbrella that you provide. So I want to ask you some questions about like scaling and growing with multiple
Right.
brands. Maybe some success strategies, or let's hear maybe some effective approaches to kind of growing and scaling a multi-brand franchise group.
Well, I think a couple of pieces. So one is cultures. We talked about systems and how important systems are. And I think if you're a service brand, any service business today is a marketing business. So having internal marketing support, not just having a system where you dump a bunch of vendors on a franchisee, but actually having some leadership in the brand to drive the lead generation and marketing and branding part of marketing. And when I say marketing, to me, a marketing person and an operations support person are really kind of the same person. If I'm talking to you about how to grow a dryer vent business or a closet business or an electrical business, our conversations are always about lead flow. And I think how you justify royalties and improve the relationship is by making sure that you demonstrate clear value month after month after month in terms of how many leads you generated for that franchisee. Look, we generated 70 inbound leads and You had 46 jobs this month that came from the corporate programs. Like, how awesome is that? That $2,000 you had to pay in royalties this month was a really good deal. That was a huge ROI you got on that spend. And so just making sure that they're well aware of the value of the royalties, because when you do that, it really kind of makes the whole relationship go better. And the next part of it is culture. If you don't define your culture in a franchise system, it defines itself. And franchise owners are some really hard driving, like aggressive people, and they're not the kind of people you want necessarily to define your culture without you, because you won't like what comes out. So we have an entrepreneurial performance culture. There's two types of cultures in a franchise business. One that's very compliance oriented. You think about a restaurant where somebody's like, you have to follow the system, and you bought this business so that you could follow a system, and we have a system, and either you are or not following this. All the conversations around what you're generally not doing right. And for the average franchisee, if they wanted a boss, they would have gotten a job. The answer is not no, but hell no. Like, get out of my store, leave me alone. Or like, why are you bugging me? Like, I'm trying paying royalties. I'm a customer. That's the way they think about it. So in a service brand, a culture that's geared around performance, and I call it a performance culture, is a much more preferable way. And the two aren't independent of each other. Obviously, if you follow the system, you have better performance. But you have to start at the very beginning, and the very first conversation you have with a franchisee when they sign the agreement. That's okay. Like, okay, we did that. We're here. Ben, where do you want to be in 3 years? Like, what does your roadmap for growth look like? Not just how do you ramp this one unit up, but do you have an interest in multi-units? Like, I can show you a pro forma for a 2-year ramp up to get you to 3 or 4 units and 5 trucks. Do you want to have more than one brand? Are you interested in learning that? And like, do you see yourself in that role? And I find when you start the conversation there, people will often, they're like, I can do that. Like, that hadn't really occurred to them that that's an option in their life until somebody like makes you think that way. And my goal early on to get a franchise owner, like, let's say you're a franchise owner in my system, to get you to think that your time as a franchise owner is worth $400 an hour. That's like, after you learn these skills we're going to teach you, not just learning how to run and manage the business, but how to actually be the business owner. There's nothing stopping you from having 100 units. And you see this in franchising a lot. Some of the big multi-unit owners are the most wealthy people in franchising, living in a house that's a whole city block long. If that's your dream, we can help you get there. But if you don't start out with that as the goal, it's hard to take somebody 2 years later and say, oh yeah, now's a good time for you to grow. And they're kind of beat up and they're in the trenches and they didn't make good decisions in the first year because they weren't thinking about growth. So being really performance oriented, and we start every conversation with a franchisee like, oh, Ben, how can I help you? Like, what are you worried about in your business right now? Where are your pain points, and what's keeping you from getting where you want to be? And let's work on that. And that kind of a relationship and service, because it's fun. One of my big tenets about franchising is that it's the social media version of business. Like, it's got a social component. It's like the team sport version of a business. We're all wearing the same jersey. We're in the locker room doing our hands up, yelling and celebrating wins and suffering losses. And we're in this together kind of thing. And that makes business fun. If you talk to people who close businesses down, it wasn't fun. It was lonely. It was isolated. They didn't have anybody to talk to. They got, when problems hit, there weren't like easy solutions. You look at what franchisors did during COVID and helped franchisees like get through a really rough time, including the franchisors I was a part of at the time. And it really, it's an amazing business. It's fun to be connected to people. The social component of running a business is huge.
Yeah.
You could go on your Facebook support group, which we use closed Facebook groups for most of our support, and say like, man, I had this crazy customer today. They did this, and everybody's putting emojis up. Yeah, that happens. That sucks. Here's this is what happened to me, and everybody starts sharing. They just get it off their chest and say, next time that happens, try this, this, and this. And people learn at like a lightning fast pace. So I think that's collaborative culture in franchising is really important.
Yeah, I think, and what's interesting, we've seen each other at shows, we've hung out at shows. Shows really kind of, when I first started going to franchise events years ago, it just kind of blew my mind. You have this view of American business, and it can be very cutthroat. You know what I mean? And Succession on HBO or something. And you go to a franchise show, And it is the total opposite. Everyone is so excited to see each other again. Everyone wants to collaborate, and that's across even competing brands, competing markets. Everyone's so willing to just tell you how they overcame something, how they did something, good strategies. And especially when you talk about, within a multi-brand group such as yourself, you have the ability to do that just in your own, home brand. I think that's awesome. Like how do you kind of foster collaboration amongst your franchisees and try to
Well,
generate even
that's a
more of
great.
that?
That's such an important. It's a hard lesson for new franchisors to learn. Is that if you're just doing one-on-one phone calls, you're probably not leveraging your support. So we start out with onboarding. We have like what we call like a 90-day jumpstart guide where we kind of get from the day you sign all the way through when you open and past the opening. It takes us usually 30 or 60 days to get someone open. But then we quickly get into a peer group. So every time you're on a call, you're on one or two of these calls a week, every week. We have a general call. We have two company-wide calls for the brand. Say in the closets, 1 month we'll talk about, like we'll have a guest speaker and we'll talk about design trends or software updates or manufacturing kind of updates and things that are new. Or we'll have somebody talk about sales and how to close more deals, that kind of stuff. Then the next one we'll have an internal discussion about problem solving, like who's stuck in their sales pipeline, like and we all kind of get in and kind of brainstorm as a group and talk about local marketing and that kind of sales and marketing kind of focus. The first one's operations, the second's marketing. Then we do, when you're in a peer group, when you start for the first year, you're in a group of the 3 or 4 people that kind of started around the time that you started. And all of you go through the first year ramp up together. And and the operations person's more of a facilitator. Like I think one of the mistakes people make in franchises is they hire an employee of their current brand because they typically started out as a founder of a service company, and like unless they're like me and they're starting multiple, but if you were in, say, the locksmith business or the car detailing business and you franchised it, you're going to hire the people that work for you to be your support people because they know your business, they work for you. That's often a mistake. It's not often that those people are going to have franchise influence skills or understand, because a franchise support person is a business coach. They're not a manager. Like they're not over franchisees. They're like a customer service rep, the beholden to franchisees. It's a very different intellectual way to think about it. So the kind of people that you hire and what their job is different. Like our folks are, really focused on coaching and making people happy and solving their problems and helping kind of foster the relationship, because franchising is a 2-metric business. Like if you talk to anybody who's been in franchising, well, it's a 2-metric business. You have to have happy franchisees. Like they have to love what they do and they have to enjoy the business, and they have to get up every day and be glad they bought it and go to work with a smile on their face. I've seen people. I watched somebody walk away from 3 Pinkberry locations in New Jersey several years ago, and they had an EBITDA of almost 300,000 a year. Like it was a very profitable set of 3, and he just closed them all and shut them down because at the time that brand got sold and went through a different company, but at the time it was really poor support. He just didn't like the culture in the brand. Even though it was financially happy, he was an unhappy camper. And you got to make sure that your people are happy first, because happy franchisees help you recruit more people. They drive sales, they influence the way customers see you. And the other metric is they have to have financial performance. You do have to have people who make money. And the metric that Aziz Sassid said, the former head of the IFA, was that a single unit of a service brand or any typical franchise needs to at least produce $75,000 a year of owner benefit. But if the owner doesn't make free and clear at least $75,000, and they need to probably make more than that, then that person who has skills and resources and drive can go make that anywhere today. Like that's not that much money in the scheme of things.
And think about how all these strategies kind of play in, one another. You're taking advantage of a hot market. And then on top of that, you're giving kind of resources and policies that are more geared to, what works now, for whether it's the labor market or just how things have changed. And then
Right.
when you're fostering that collaborative aspect, when you're increasing the engagement between everyone within your group, when you have those performers and you have built a system that can provide for that economic success, well, now that's feeding into your recruitment, because now the people that are talking and sharing how they've done and how they're making the money, are, you have other people that are thinking, you know what, I want to hitch onto this train. This sounds like such a great idea. So it can all really just kind of increase this cycle, when you're letting it all work together. And I was very interested too. I put another poll up because in working with a lot of franchises, especially the last year or so, we've signed on some great franchises that are new or emerging, and they have that exciting kind of beginning phase, and then sometimes there's this lull where they have a hard time actually finding new franchisees. And so I was interested to see if there was similar struggles out there with those that are maybe in this process right now. And you offered some great real insight in the last topic point of kind of really creating and developing that performance driven culture. I'm curious on the recruitment aspect.
Yeah,
Um, you know,
I mean, that's so important. We have one open up every day. We sometimes have about the same number shut down or stop franchising, and they don't necessarily stop franchising because the business wasn't viable or there wasn't a market for that franchise. The franchisor, the founder, the CEO, and the team that person built that simply didn't have the experience or knowledge to go. So one of my pieces of advice is to make sure you're talking to people or hire a coach or work with a development company that can give you kind of ongoing support. That's really important. When it comes to development, for me, I think the most important advice I could give a new franchisor, if you were going to start out tomorrow, is you have to get to 10 units as quickly as you can. And you shouldn't worry about selling franchises to do that. Like I always, when I start any brand, I try to start anywhere from 4 to 5, what I call pilots. And I'll find friends, family, employees, people I know, people that I think would be good at the business. I'll say, look, I'm launching a brand. I've been doing this a long time. Like it's going to take off, but I'll give you a franchise if you'll agree to be part of our kind of pilot program and help us kind of pilot this out. And, we sign a franchise agreement. They start paying royalties. They don't pay for a franchise fee. And we go through the structure to get them onboarded. We kind of invest a little bit in their business to make sure that, everything's proven and works the way that we want it to work. And because if you have 8 or 10 people like that you've gotten right off the bat, you can get to 25 in the blink of an eye. Like once you start getting traction, as you have a community of people get stuck at this 1, 2, 3, 4 units or no units in company stores, and they don't know why. It's because you have to be aggressive and super intentional on getting some pilots in, and don't like the value in a franchise company for you as a founder is in the royalty stream only. It has nothing to do with how much money you collect from selling franchises. So even pilot units, if they all survive and get through the learning curve, they end up paying royalties, and it makes your business worth a substantial amount just in itself. So it also helps you you have people that can validate and stuff. I break my recruitment up into 3 buckets. I think this is really important, and I hope people pay attention to this. There really are 3 ways outside of that pilot group. The first is you can go to franchise brokers. That's getting to be harder and harder way to recruit people. If you're not an experienced franchisor and you don't have relationships, I think something like 80 or 90% of the capacity in broker networks is sucked up by FSOs today. So like the big, like the Franchise Fast Lanes and Brand One, some of those huge companies that do broker deals, they're just, all the really good brokers are doing big unit deals through those guys. So it's not as easy to do broker deals as it used to be. And so I try to limit my broker deals to 30% or less of all the deals I do. Like I'll take all the ones I can get, but that's not my primary way of growing the system. The next bucket is another third is what I call organic. So advertising on portals and having a good recruitment website, doing Facebook advertising, paid search, the traditional type of non-broker lead generation, and driving people to a website that explains your story and has video and those things. And then the third and most important bucket for me, because this is where your top performers come from, is you need to think of yourself in the first couple of years as a talent scout. Like you have to go out and find people that are good to the business. You and I were talking about carpentry, and you were like, I built this bookshelf behind me and I have a CNC printer on my shelf over here and I'm all into 3D. Okay, well, it's a business for you because it's right in your wheelhouse. It's 100% the kind of business that somebody like you would buy. So if I met you, or if your wife was a home organizer or you were a carpenter and you like doing home improvement, I would say, if you ever thought about doing closets, I have some really cool incentive programs where I'll let somebody put a very small amount of money down and just break the franchise fee up into payments, no interest payments. We don't finance it. We just make payment arrangements. which is a really clever way to do things. And so for $20,000, $15,000 or $20,000, you could get started in a closet business. And since I'm not paying a broker or advertising costs, it's an easy way for me to recruit. But I get somebody like you who has those skills, who I know is going to be good at this business because it's a business that kind of hits the things that you already like. And so doing talent scouting, like in my dryer vent business, I go after HVAC contractors who are my age in their 50s and they're tired of climbing in attics, and they still want to run a truck or they want to have some employees, but they're tired of the heavy lifting and big HVAC units, and dryer vent cleaning is an easy business. But actually going out and finding those people and making creative deals, you're looking for somebody who has the skills, passions, drive, and knowledge to be a top performer. Because the top performers in your system are what really drive your royalty revenue, and they're what really kind of make the business grow. And if you just do broker deals, the average broker person is somebody my age who's coming out of a laid off career for Google or somewhere, kind of corporate career. They're not always the best franchise owners. Like my broker placement sometimes are worse quality placement than the people I get organically or the people that I get through talent recruiting. They're just, that's who we are taught to go after in franchising. I think that's a mistake. So I try to limit that. Some of those people are good, some aren't. If you're 55 and you've never run a business, like you need a lot more handholding than somebody who's 22 who like loves carpentry and has good people skills and wants to be Gary V. Like that person's going to hit the ground running. And the thing about recruiting people in their 20s is, you don't remember what you did when you're my age. You don't remember your 20s at all. Like you can make a hot mess of 5 or 6 businesses in a row and still do amazing. And younger buyers today have this idea that if you're not failing, you're not trying. They're not afraid to fail. It doesn't mean that they fail. They actually fail at a much lower rate. But simply by not being afraid of failure the way baby boomers or Gen X's were, because like if you're a baby boomer, you were raised to go to college, work for a Fortune 500 company, and retire on a pension at 55. And that's a pipe dream. That didn't work for anybody. And this idea that you have to pay your dues and work 70 hours a week and ruin your marriage and become alcoholic and have bad mental health. And, like who wants that life? It's a bad life. Like nobody wants that. That's why Gen X and Gen Z, the younger people, millennials, they don't want to work in offices. They want to have more control over their business. So franchising kind of fits into that in a really nice way.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. And there's just so much of that element that, I don't know, it kind of all pieces together. I think, we were joking around earlier, millennials get a bad rap from their work ethic aspect, but you're absolutely right. Like you have generations growing up and seeing that, the Homer Simpsons of the world where he hates his job and he's miserable and he goes to Moe's for, a few hours just to drown it away. And it's like, well, maybe there's a better way to do it. And I think franchising is such a microcosm of that. It's not only gives you so many additional resources and a community as a resource, it gives you a proven business that you basically know that works right from the get-go, and you get to do it on your terms. You get to be your own boss, as you said. It's not a job. So I think there's so many elements that tie together. It's very cool. I know we went over a little bit, just a few minutes. I always want to try to leave a few minutes. I thought that the information was outstanding today, Thomas. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to leave a couple minutes here. So if you have a question for Thomas, there's some real world wisdom here. We've gotten some actual strategies to help with some aspects of running a business. But if you've held on to a question and you haven't asked it, please throw it in the chat. I want to leave a few minutes here to address anything. And I'm just going to put up, while we're waiting to see if anyone's interested, the brands that Thomas has as well.
Yeah, it's homerunfranchising.com is our website. Home Run Franchises. Sorry, not franchising, but it's the Up Closets, the Lighting Squad. Up Closets is a custom closet brand. The Lighting Squad's a handyman electrical. You hang ceiling fans and install ring cameras and kind of light, kind of nuisance stuff. And Lifestyle Window Films is a window tinting for homes and businesses. And Dryer Vent Superheroes is our dryer vent business. And our two main ones are the Dryer Vent and Up Closets. We're growing real rapidly this year. So super fun.
Great. Do you have any new brands or verticals that you guys are working on that you're hoping to be in soon?
We always, so the advantage of doing this type of business is you build an infrastructure for incubating, piloting, testing out businesses. We always have 2 or 3 that we're working on. I keep a couple of vehicles here in Nashville, and we have techs that we bounce from truck to truck to try and experiment with different things. We're doing a water heater replacement business, and we're doing a kitchen cabinet business that's related to the closet. So examples of franchising brands with no physical assets for a company that generates leads and places with some contractors in a market. There are lots of, a lot of the cleaning brands, like Jan Pro were kind of in that, where Jan Pro would sell commercial cleaning contracts for like a big skyscraper, and they would sell a $5,000 franchise to somebody to do 2 floors of the building, and they might have 4 franchisees. It was a good, lucrative contract, but you were buying in at a really low level. So there are quite a few, especially in the cleaning business. That's really common. There are some restoration industry businesses that do that. I think that's a really, if you have the sales and marketing and ability to kind of churn leads like that, then that could be an interesting way to do business as you go. I don't know, Jim, if that answers your question.
Thank you, Jim. All right. Any other questions from anybody else? Chelsea's got one brewing here.
Yeah. But service is cool. I encourage. So that's a great point. Chelsea says, how do you think about cross-selling across the band? So I intentionally start brands that work together. So our core customer is the same. And ironically, sometimes we've got pictures. I've had a franchisee finish up a quote for somebody for closets, and then my window film or duct cleaning person comes right after. The vans are like literally parked in front of the same customer. It's really funny when that happens. But my best advice is we use rack cards, which are, I've actually got one here on my desk, but a rack card looks like this. It's a 2-sided kind of pretty, but we use Canva for Teams for our printing, and so franchisees can print it local at a FedEx or UPS store. But all of our franchisees have rack cards for all the other brands that operate in that market, and we give them out on every call. We say, here's our sister companies. They're not really our sister companies, but they pay referrals back and forth, and they have arrangements for that. So if I'm doing lighting, I can often get somebody interested in a closet or dryer vent cleaning. And that's funny, when another person recommends your other brand, it like carries a much higher credibility, right? They almost always close that deal, and rack cards are like $100 for $250. They're really cheap. It's like, that's been the highest ROI marketing thing we do. So we talk a lot about making sure that you have all those and you bring them in, and you just leave them with people and say, hey, in case you ever need these things, here's some other stuff that our sister companies do. We're really good at it, and see what happens.
And it makes sense. It's almost an objective opinion. They don't have a skin in the game. They're not installing closets. So when they tell me about this closet brand that they recommend, that it carries some weight. But on the other side of it, you have a referral program basically built in. You already have that community of everyone sharing, that kind of culture already kind of built in. So that's just another piece of it.
And it's not just consumer cross-selling. We also franchise cross-sell. So part of my roadmap for some people, depending on the person, like the dryer vent guy, Daniel in Palm Beach, has plans to open up next year an Up Closets brand. He wants to own one of everything that we have. He wants to stay in one trade area, so you can only open so many units of each. So having multiple brands allows him to scale into other related businesses. And so we create a lot of transparency in our system to what's going on in the other brands. And when we do conference, we do them all together. So it's like kind of like Neighborly does. Like, it's not like we're not in silos. And I have like a Up Closets person in Kennesaw, kind of Cobb County, kind of Cherokee County, Georgia, outside of Atlanta, who's opening up in June for Dryer Vent Superheroes locations to go right. She's already like a year in, already moved into that brand. She's a real sophisticated owner and has, she's a small business banker, and she just gets the pro formas. She's like, wow, this is a great business. Up Closets is a really nice high ticket item with a good margin, but you sell 1 or 2 or 3 of those a week. Whereas the dryer vent stuff, you're doing 3 or 4 or 5 of those a day, 5 days a week. It's like having an ATM, that kind of a service business. It's just money every day, And so she likes the 2 of those together. But I think you should create roadmaps and pro formas for your franchisees so that they understand how they fit together and when to do it and what kind of money it takes, and build a pro forma that the first business can actually fund the growth of the other businesses. And that concept that's how you grow your own multi-unit owners. That's the sweet spot. If you can get, if you're 200 units and 50 or 60 or 70 of them came from internal expansions like that, you don't have development cost on those. Like, it's an amazing thing. I'll often let people make payment arrangements on those. I'll say, if you want it, put $5,000 down. We'll give you $1,000 note, no interest, no financing, and just you're good to go. And then they just keep doing that over and over. And then all of a sudden you've got 100 units that more than you would have otherwise. It's a really smart strategy. So Chelsea, I don't know which version of that question you were asking, but hopefully that answered your question. All right.
Perfect. All right. All right. Well, Thomas, I want to thank you again. This was awesome. We obviously enjoy partnership together. So when I did this, I didn't want to talk about, workies and we're so great. I wanted to actually, learn like the knowledge that you had up there, especially within this space. And this was great. This was really great information that I know I'm appreciative to kind of understand it so much better. And I'm sure everyone that was able to attend and see the recording will appreciate the knowledge as well. So thank you so much for taking some time. And look forward to seeing you again here soon at another show.
All right, good deal. We will be at the IFE in New York coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I will too. That'll be perfect.
We have an Up Closets booth, so come by and say hello. So.
All right, that sounds good. I'll see you there.
Good deal. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks, Ben.